All right, today we're diving into a really critical principle of strategy, Law 47 from Robert Greene's work. Now, this one's a bit of a curveball. It teaches something that goes against our instincts, that the most dangerous moment is actually the moment you win. So, let's get into it and figure out why that is. And you know what better way to kick this off than with a quote from Napoleon Bonaparte himself? I mean, think about it. This is a guy who knew a thing or two about incredible wins and absolutely devastating losses. His words just nail the core of Law 47, right? That feeling of success, that rush. It can make even the smartest people totally blind to what's coming next.
So, here's the law itself. Do not go past the mark you aimed for. In victory, learn when to stop. You really have to think of it as a big flashing warning sign. The law is basically telling us that success itself can be a trap. When you're in that moment of victory, you feel on top of the world, and that's when arrogance and overconfidence creep in, pushing you to go just a little further. But in doing that, you might end up creating way more enemies than you ever beat in the first place.
Yeah, it's a really dangerous paradox, isn't it? When you're celebrating, when emotions are running wild, that is exactly when you need a clear, rational head. But what do we usually do? We throw strategy right out the window. We start believing our own hype, thinking that this winning streak, this momentum will just last forever. Big mistake.
Okay, let's look at a real-world example of what happens when you ignore this law. And we're talking about a huge violation with catastrophic results. Our case study? The legendary Cyrus the Great, founder of the Persian Empire.
I mean, this guy's career was just one victory after another. Defeating the Medes, conquering Lydia, crushing Babylon. He was on an absolute roll. They literally called him King of the World. But here's the problem. With every single win, this dangerous idea started growing in his head, that he wasn't just a man anymore, he was invincible. And it was that myth, the one he told himself, that led him straight into his last disastrous campaign. So the queen of the Massagetae, a woman named Tomiris, actually gave him an out, a really clear one. She basically said, look, you rule your people, I'll rule mine. Let's just live in peace. She was offering him a chance to just stop, to be happy with the massive empire he'd already built. But did he listen? Of course not. His arrogance was so off the charts, he didn't hear a warning. All he heard was a challenge. In his mind, there was no such thing as a limit to his power. So instead of a straight-up fight, Cyrus decides to use a pretty dirty trick. He sets up this huge feast with tons of strong wine, abandons the camp, and lets about a third of her army, including her son, just stumble in and get completely wasted. Then he captures them. He thought this was some brilliant strategy, you know? An easy win. But it was just cheap, and he totally missed the bigger picture. He wasn't just escalating a war, he was making it personal. He was pushing his enemy into an absolute rage. And then things get even worse. Cyrus refuses to release her son, and the son, out of shame, takes his own life. At that point, for Queen Tomiris, everything changed. This was no longer about land or power, it was a blood feud. And she issues this absolutely chilling final threat, swearing by the sun that she's going to give Cyrus more blood than he could ever drink. And she made good on that promise. In the battle that followed, her enraged army just decimated the Persians. They killed Cyrus himself. So let's be clear about what happened here. His complete inability to just stop, to see that he had already won, led directly to his own death. He pushed past the finish line and ended up undoing a lifetime of incredible work in one single, arrogant campaign. And you know, without him, the empire he'd built started to fall apart almost immediately.
Okay, so that's what happens when you get it wrong. Now, let's flip the script and look at a brilliant example of someone who got this law absolutely right. Let's talk about the mastery of Madame de Pompadour. I mean, her position as the official mistress to King Louis XV of France, it doesn't get much more precarious than that.
Her victory wasn't just luck. It was the complete opposite of Cyrus's brute force approach. Her entire rise to power was a masterpiece of careful, patient, long-term planning. She cultivated her talents, she got access to the right circles, she engineered these chance encounters with the king. She didn't just get his attention, she built the entire situation from the ground up to capture his heart.
And this is what's so fascinating. She just threw out the rule book for what a king's mistress was supposed to do. You know, the typical play was to grab as much money and jewels as you can, crush your enemies, because you know your time in the spotlight is probably short. But Pompadour, she did the exact opposite. She wasn't playing for short-term gains. She was playing the long game. She used her charm and her political smarts to build a real power base. She even managed to win over the queen. Can you imagine?
But this was her true masterstroke. The moment that would have been the end for any other mistress, when her physical relationship with the king was over, she didn't panic. She didn't fight it. Instead, she took control of the situation. She realized her victory wasn't about being his lover forever. The real goal was to make herself so essential to his life that he couldn't function without her. She consolidated her win. She knew exactly when to stop pushing.
And the result? 20 years. Just think about that. A typical mistress might last a year, maybe 2, before being tossed aside. Madame de Pompadour remained the most powerful woman in France for 2 decades. An unprecedented reign. And she died in power, in the palace, not forgotten in some remote convent. Why? Because she was a master of timing. She knew when to push, when to wait, and, crucially, she knew when to stop.
So this is all fascinating history, but how do we actually use this? How do you apply this law to your own life? Let's break down the keys to power here. How to really master the art of stopping and make sure your success is strategic, not just a reckless win that blows up in your face.
Look, real power isn't just about being strong or winning one battle. It's about being adaptable. It's about controlling your own emotions, especially that intoxicating feeling of success. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over because it worked once. You have to recognize that luck and circumstance always play a part. And for goodness sake, never, ever mistake momentum for actual strategy. They are not the same thing.
At the end of the day, this really all boils down to one word: hubris. You know, that excessive pride, that over-the-top self-confidence. It's the poison that victory creates. And history is just littered with the bodies of empires and people who fell victim to it. A perfect example? The ancient Athenians. They were riding high on a series of easy wins, felt invincible, and decided to launch this massive, rash invasion of Sicily. And that one single act of overreaching, it completely destroyed their empire.
I love this old Japanese proverb, when you have won a victory, tighten the strings of your helmet. It's such a powerful image, right? It tells you that the moment you win is not the time to relax and celebrate. It's the time to be more alert than ever. It's time to shift gears from raw force to clever strategy. The battle might be done, but the larger game, the war for lasting power, that's never truly over. All right, so we've seen the disaster of Cyrus the Great and the absolute mastery of Madame de Pompadour. So what's the final takeaway? What's the judgment on Law 47?
It's simple, really. What comes last is what people remember. Think of it like a great movie or a play. The ending defines the entire experience. If you push too far, if you add one scene too many, you risk ruining the whole thing. You might even turn your amazing victory into a pathetic defeat. A well-timed ending is everything.
And this isn't just about ancient battles or royal courts. This principle is everywhere. Take trial lawyers, for instance. A great lawyer knows that when they've backed a witness into a corner, when they've made their point and won, they shut up. They don't ask that one extra question that gives the witness a chance to wriggle free. No way. You secure the triumph and you stop.
So here's the final thought for you. The next time you win, the next time you achieve something big, I want you to remember this law. Feel that pull of momentum, that urge to just keep going, and resist it. Take a step back, solidify what you've just won, and then ask yourself the really important question. Your victory is won. What is your next move?